Oftentimes when I come in and I start working with a firm, I'll meet with the tax manager and I'll meet with some of the senior tax preparers and the lower level, maybe data entry preparers. And what we'll find is as we go through these things, all the different strategies, as we go through the different options and things that they can do for their clients, there may be some strategies they thought that they were already taking care of. Nobody is perfect, and certainly I've gotten it wrong in the past. But in general, we have to be willing to learn and make changes. If we go to look at the planning and the processes that are in place and we find out we're doing something wrong, we have to be proactive in fixing that wrong. So a really common area where we find that maybe people haven't been doing it exactly the right way is when we look at reasonable compensation for an S corporation owner. An S Corp, as I'm sure you guys know, is required to pay reasonable compensations to its officers. You have to be able to support that. And oftentimes we'll find that, well, we've just been doing 30% or 50% or 60%, whatever it might be. We're just doing that as the basis for the reasonable compensation. And when I kind of prod into that, I said, well, what if they're making, so if they're making $100,000, they're doing, 50%. So they're having a $50,000 reasonable compensation. But there's no reason for the $50,000 aside from its 50%. The follow-up question I generally ask is, okay, so if they were making $200,000, their salary would be $100,000, and the tax preparers or CPAs, EAs, everybody's like, well, yeah, I guess that would make sense. They say, okay, well, what if they're making $3 million? Is there reasonable compensation $1.5 million? That's what you go on a W-2? And without fail, every single time they're like, well, no, obviously not. And so we've already kind of disproven that 50% or any percentage, 30%, 60%, I think we've heard them all. Percentage isn't how you determine what a business owner's reasonable compensations should be. It needs to be grounded in supportable facts. Oftentimes this can be accomplished in-house. There's obviously a lot of services out there that will do a reasonable compensation report for you. But at the end of the day, if we can quantify what the business owner is doing, how many hours they're spending, and what a reasonable salary for somebody else to do that, it generally, oftentimes will end up in their favor. There's 100 tools online. There's reasonable compensation calculators out there you can use. But if you know that you have somebody who is a landscaper working in Volusia County, it's pretty easy to go get the average salary, take a look at their proficiency, and establish what a reasonable rate to pay somebody who is a landscaper in that area would be. Remembering that they're probably the office manager, and they're probably also the mail clerk as well as the CEO too. So balancing it out can be a little bit trickier. But at the end of the day, when you take the time to go through and really establish what that reasonable compensation is, your client ends up with a defendable salary. And most of the time, they don't even have to defend it because you've set it at a rate that's not going to trigger any extra scrutiny.